Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, welcome to the third panel of the Civil Society Forum of the Berlin Process. My name is Walter Kaufmann. I'm the head of the Department for Eastern and Southeastern Europe at the Heinrich Böll Foundation, which is the green affiliated political foundation in Germany. It's my pleasure to chair this short panel on the green agenda committing to sustainable Europe. Before I will introduce to you our panelists, let me say a few words on the topic of our discussion. When it comes to green issues, and particularly the Green Deal of the European Union, we have not been missing sound and sometimes even pathetic statements over the last 2 years, even in regard to the Western Balkans. Remember when the European Green Deal was unveiled in December 2019, EU Commission President von der Leyen called it Europe's man on the moon moment. 10 months later, in October 2020, the Berlin Process Summit in Sofia adopted the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans as an extension of the European Green Deal. As the communiqué reads, quote, "We have today agreed to fully endorse the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans and express our commitment to implement actions in the following 5 pillars." And then come the following pillars. First, climate, energy, mobility. Second, circular economy. Third, depollution, which means monitoring and prevention of pollution. Fourth, sustainable agriculture. And fifth, protection of biodiversity. This declaration was followed by several statements of West Balkan leaders. Just to quote the Serbian President Vučić, who said last December in 2020, Serbia must become a climate neutral society by 2050. Well, this sounds ambitious and promising. It looks like West Balkan leaders have unanimously embarked on the train for green transition. In reality, however, we see at least a much more ambivalent or mixed picture in regard to the transition from coal power generation to renewables. Some countries develop exit plans, others construct new coal plants. Regarding the reduction of air pollution, regarding the fulfilling of obligations under the European Energy Community Treaty, or regarding biodiversity obligations that run counter, for example, to small hydropower projects still mushrooming all over the region. At this introductory panel, and this panel will be followed by several workshops on the same topic this afternoon and tomorrow, we first want to assess the potential that the Green Agenda for the West Balkan offers to the region, the challenges it faces, and probably most important, what political instruments and leverage need to be developed and employed to implement the Green Agenda in the sense of a profound ecological and social modernization of the West Balkan economies. How to avoid its abuse as an instrument for greenwashing, and how can the Berlin process help in generating the necessary political energy behind the Green Agenda. I'm very pleased to introduce to you my distinguished panelists. First, Mrs. Guillemette Vachey. She works as a policy officer at the European Commission covering environment and climate change at DG NEAR and the Department for Western Balkans Regional Cooperation and Programs. Second is Sonja Risteska. She is a project officer for Southeast Europe at the environmental think tank Agora, Energiewende. Then we have Mr. Samir Lemeš from Zenica. He is a professor at the Polytechnic Faculty of the University of Zenica and the president of the steering board of the NGO Ecoforum Zenica. And last but not least, Vladimir Đurđević from Belgrade, associate professor on meteorology at the Faculty of Physics and one of the co-leaders of the largest national research project in Serbia related to climate modeling and climate change. We will have the following procedure, 2 short rounds among the panelists, and then we open up for you, for the audience. You have both the chance to come in through the Q&A function, through the chat, or also you can raise your hand, and I will give you the floor to raise your question or to give your comment orally. So, but to start with our panelists, I would like to start with Mrs. Vachey. The Green Agenda for the Western Balkan, Ms. Vachey, is an important progressive policy document. I have started, however, with a rather critical assessment of the current state of affairs regarding the implementation of the Green Agenda, or let's say the readiness to start implementation. Of course, it's still too short and even for a kind of intermediate evaluation, but what is your assessment of the starting conditions? What are the main challenges, and what could or should the Berlin process contribute to make the West Balkan Green Agenda project stronger? Ms. Vachey, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaufmann, and good afternoon from my side to all. I would like to first warmly thank the Aspen Institute and the Southeast Europe Association for the invitation to this panel discussion, and more generally for the organization of this CSO forum to feed in the Berlin process. I welcome very much our exchange today, given the key role civil society organizations play in the Western Balkans. From my perspective of dealing with environmental and climate issues for quite some years now in DG NEAR, working with CSO is really a necessity, given their crucial watchdog role and their contribution to democratic debates. So that's, I think, important point I wanted to, first of all, to make, but let me now briefly answer your questions. So on the assessment that we are doing on our side, so from the Commission perspective on the current situation and the starting condition of the Western Balkans regarding the Green Agenda, well, like in the EU member states, environment degradation and climate change are, of course, of increasing concern of the people in the region. But it's true that the Western Balkans are expected to be affected above average by climate change. They are strongly dependent on highly polluted coal power plants, with cities recording lowest air quality in the world, sometimes, especially in winter. At the same time, and that's where also I would like to bring a bit of more positive note, the region retains really a significant proportion of European biodiversity, with pristine natural habitats, which, if protected, can really be an opportunity in the sense that it will help reducing the impact of climate change and produce tangible results. Now, the main objective of the Green Agenda is to turn these challenges into opportunities and to switch to a modern, resource-efficient and competitive economy, so economies in the regions, where basically growth is decoupled from emission and resource use and waste generation. So that's really an ambitious goal. But of course, we need, as you were saying, to take into account that the starting point is different for the Western Balkans in general compared to the EU, in terms of policies, in terms of energy security, or in terms of access to financing. So from several perspectives. Concretely, the Green Agenda, which is foreseen in the Green Deal itself as one of its 47 actions, is really mirroring its objective, but is adapted to the circumstances of the region. So to summarize, the ambition, the destination of the travel is the same, given the European perspective of the Western Balkans, but the journey itself might be more gradual and will, of course, not happen overnight. In some cases, however, leapfrogging would be really encouraged, for example, for the shift from linear to circular economy. So that would be to answer your first question on the starting point. Now, of course, this Green Agenda for the Western Balkans is a challenge in itself. Its implementation is a challenge in itself. The adaptation of the Western Balkans economies, administration and system to the new green paradigm will be costly. And it will also require strong political commitment across the board to implement really transformational policy reforms. So that's why the Green Agenda really requires a whole economy and a whole government approach, and will therefore imply better acquis implementation, better acquis enforcement, strong interinstitutional coordination. So that's a bit the traditional challenges that we anyway see in the process of accession negotiation. And in addition, a number of financing instruments and mechanisms will need to be really deployed from national budgets, from international donors, and from private sectors. So the EU stands by the regions in terms of technical and financial support, and that's also, of course, a point I wanted to stress here, notably through the new instrument for pre-accession assistance, IPA3. Now, being conscious of the time, just to finish on the last question on whether the Berlin process, how the Berlin process could contribute to make the Western Balkan Green Agenda project stronger. Well, just first to clarify that the Green Agenda, we really see it more than just a project, but really, the guiding framework to shift paradigm and to guide both international and domestic actions to go for a green transition. Of course, the Berlin process, when it was created in 2014, responded to a genuine need. On the one hand, there was a need to strengthen regional cooperation among Western Balkans, and on the other hand, for EU member states, there was a need to demonstrate that the Western Balkans are part of the European family. And just to stress that both Poznan and Sofia summits within the Berlin process did play a key role in the development of the Green Agenda by bringing Western Balkans together, committing to a common and ambitious goal on their way to the EU. So I think the fact that it brings Western Balkan leaders and some member states around the same table and secure the necessary political ownership, which is necessary for such an ambitious process. So there is a top-down dimension, let's say, but there's also a bottom-up dimension. And I think today's event is the best proof of it, that out of 10 working groups of this CSO forum, 3 are dedicated to the Green Agenda. So I think the civil society forum within the Berlin process has indeed a role to play, because of course, beyond financing, significant efforts to shift to the green paradigm are necessary all around, throughout the society. We see it comes from regulatory level to promoting new consumer habits or behavior, enhancing regional cooperation on cross-border issues, etc. So civil society and local communities will really play a crucial role in supporting such efforts and reform, as well, of course, as mobilizing citizens and leaders at all levels for a just, inclusive, and green transition. So I really think that the Berlin process is an excellent framework to do so. I could say also a word on the role of regional organizations, such as the transport and energy community, but I will leave it here for now and looking forward to the discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ms. Vachey. So I understood the direction is clear. The journey may be more gradual, but it's ongoing, and we need more alignment of political instruments, more political commitment, and the civil society has an important role to play in mobilizing. Also, regional cooperation, which is of course both politically and technically extremely important when it comes to green transition. Sonja, I know that Agora is engaging a lot in trying to develop scenario of phasing out coal and substituting it with renewables. It's the elephant in the room, yeah, that most of the West Balkan countries, but Albania, are still very much dependent on coal power plants and coal energy. And they are not just continuing subsidizing coal, often or sometimes in violation of legal frameworks, but even some of them are constructing or developing new coal power plant projects, mostly with Chinese money. How should the EU, its green agenda, address this topic, and how do you assess recent developments around Kolubara B in Serbia, introduction of carbon pricing in Northern Macedonia? Are we already on the path? But for this coal power plant projects, how is your assessment?
Thank you, Walter. I hope you can hear me well. Yes, we are, I would be cautiously maybe optimistic that we are on the path. However, whether it should be speeded up, yes, definitely. Unfortunately, even though there have been some positive developments in the region concerning abandoning new coal projects, like it happened, I think, a year or two ago. I think it was before the pandemic in Kosovo, then the Kolubara one just a few weeks ago. It's none of the countries which have lignite. The countries mainly use lignite in the Western Balkans, not mainly, but like 100%. None of them have actually announced any coal phase-out plans. And this is, of course, very important. If you want to decarbonize your power sector, you need to have an announced coal phase-out. You need to have a plan in place because this is not something that everybody knows that it's not happening from one day to the other. But you need years, sometimes decades, in order to be able for the countries to transition from coal to clean energy or electricity in this case, because it's not only about the power system and the stability of the power system, but it's also about just transition and actually finding a solution for all the people who are employed in this sector, because we know that they will be hardly hit. This is not something that it's a secret. And also for the regions who mainly depend, whose economies depend mainly on the production of electricity from lignite. Can the Western Balkans Green Agenda help? Of course it can. That is the whole point of why it was introduced as, maybe, as I like to call it colloquially, the little sister of the EU Green Deal. But there is one main difference. This is not something that the countries have to implement. This is a pledge. This is something that they sign, that they will. But unlike the EU Green Deal, there are no targets. There are no targets under the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans of how much you need to lower your emissions up to what year. There are no targets for renewables deployment. There are no targets for energy efficiency. So even though there is a pledge to, of course, follow the EU member states and to converge the region, unfortunately, still the main things which should be in place in order for that to happen are missing, and that's the setting of targets of how much we want to see renewables in 2030 in the region, on national, regional level, how much you want to see emissions reduction, apart from the indices. So they're also very different. Like if you see the Bosnian indice, for instance, with the one from North Macedonia, there are quite big discrepancies. And also plans for coal phase out. Because what is it that we want to achieve? There are funds available. Unfortunately, as well here, things are not going, I would say, in the quite right direction, because if you see the economic and investment plan, which should actually help implement the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans, currently, at least, most of the projects envisaged in the flagship initiative under coal transition are gas. Actually, almost all of them are. There is only one infrastructure project concerning electricity. All of the others are about gas infrastructure or fossil gas infrastructure. Of course, yes, there is maybe a completely different debate of how much gas do we need in the region and how much infrastructure about gas we need in the region. Also concerning future hydrogen development. I would not talk about that, but what we really need in order to see how much we need investments in what kind of, I would say, infrastructure, we first need to set up targets about what we want to achieve actually up until what year, and then not, because the risk of stranded assets, the risk of again locking in the region in fossil fuel, it's quite big, and this needs to be avoided, and there are funds for that. There is, I would say, somewhat a political will, maybe not between the political elites currently governing, but for instance, the utilities are quite aware of that. The civil society is quite aware of that. The EU side, of course, the partners from the EU side are quite aware of that. So there is, I would say, good environment, especially with the regional, I would say, partners starting to decarbonize or starting to do the coal phase out. Greece, for instance, Romania also semi-announced a coal phase out by 2032. So there is also market pressure we see from renewables in Serbia, when you have really an influx of investors wanting to come and trying to invest, which also push even more or put even more pressure on the, I would say, incumbent utilities who try to invest even, I mean, still in lignite. There is the pressure to introduce CO2 pricing or to introduce some sort of ETS. probably there will be the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which will also hit electricity imports in the EU, which will have a great impact on the exports from the region to the EU. So there is, I would say, an environment like much stronger than maybe a few years ago, which will impact the decision in the power sector. But the main, I think, not to repeat myself, but yes, the main things missing are really the political will on national level there, and also setting really pledging officially that they will do the coal phase out, and then setting up targets on what really we want to achieve in the next 20 and 30 years in the region when it comes to the power sector.
Thank you so much, Sonja. And I think I can directly come to Vladimir. Guillemette Vachey has said that from an EU point of view, the direction is clear. The journey may be gradual, but the direction is clear. Sonja now put it out that there is a lack of political will. And I wonder how is the situation in Serbia? Is the direction clear? Or is it like in some other political areas often unclear where the direction goes? Everybody's speaking about European integration, but developments often contradicting. What about the situation in the energy or decarbonization field? You have had recently some decisions, but still very controversial ones. And how do you assess the role of international investors here coming from China, but also US money or even European money in fossil infrastructure like gas? How do you assess that? You have to unmute, please.
Okay, thank you for the question. The question is really nice and super interesting, especially this part how we're gonna deal with the foreign investments related to the coal and to the gas here in Serbia, in terms that we signed this document that we already talked about, the Sofia agreement. So it's really interesting. I think we still don't have it here in Serbia. We still don't have a clear sign that we recognize that we should follow this not just European but the global trend of decarbonization. We start to talk about that. We talk about that a little bit more in comparison how much we talk about that in the past. But I don't think that we have a clear signs on that. And in that terms, since that we are civil society forum here, I think that one of the answers from civil society community should be that we should use these two words, the Sofia Declaration, as much as possible. First of all, because I think that the general public in Serbia, in region, they don't really recognize this document as important. And I also think that many of them don't really know that this document is signed. So I think that we should use these two words in terms that we can help people to understand that we sign one really important document. The consequences of that document is really big for us as a society, since that we should also transform ourselves in the same way as Europe plans to do that. And we see now that China also plans to do that, and United States also will do that. So that's one part. This is, let's say, our part of the job is to talk about it and to help people to understand what Sofia agreement really means, and that we should be ready for this kind of transformation. In that terms, talking more about the Sofia Declaration, I think that this discrepancy between what's happening and what we signed will really be smaller. On the other side, talking about these foreign investments, we saw in the last few months really big U-turns from United States and China relating to decarbonization. The United States joined the Paris Agreement again. They said that they're going to decarbonize themselves up to 2050. And on another side, China said that it will also decarbonize the whole country by the 2060. Even it is China plan is 10 years lagging behind the European Union and United States. I think that their plan, as it is presented, is more ambitious than Europeans and United States, because they didn't see reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in the recent years in comparison to United States and European Union. We know that both of them have already decreased some part of emissions, but China is still on the uphill part of the curve, and probably the decreasing the emissions to 2060, it's been a more ambitious job to them in comparison to European Union and United States. But on the other side, as I think that in the region, we don't see this U-turn that happened in both countries, in the United States and in China. So the investments that are planned here, or that we are talking about, like a building of new coal power plant in Kostolac, financed by and built by China, and also we heard about gas terminals in Adriatic Sea and Ionian Sea. I'm not sure right location, but we talk about that in the past that are let's say United States project. It's some kind of discrepancy in terms of what that countries do on a national level. The Russia is a special player here. I think that Russia for many years was very unclear about the climate change. Declaratively in international negotiation, they sign agreement, but I don't see that Russia have really clear signals how they're going to approach this Paris Agreement and how it's going to happen in the future. And in that sense, I'm not sure how they're going to behave here. Probably they will continue with this, let's call gas story and building the gas pipe from Bulgaria to Serbia. And I'm not sure how that's going to change in the future. In terms of these Chinese and United States investments, probably these changes in these countries will come into our region in one moment. It's question when it's going to come. It's not happened in the same way and in the same moment as in the United States and China. So we're going to probably have some time lag to hear these signals from the country here in the region. So in that sense, I think that we should be very careful what we are doing and what we are planning, because this signal will come in one moment, and if this coming of the signal is too late, then we're probably going to step in some kind of unfavorable developments here. So it's not right now. It's not clear how is that going to happen. Third thing, what I would like to underline, I think that on the international level, the negotiation within the UNFCCC, and the next, we all know that this year is very important meeting in Glasgow, which is going to be some kind of update of Paris Agreement. I think that on international scene, we should put more, let's say, efforts in terms not just to report this national determined contribution in terms of national borders of the countries, but we also should talk about of these big economies, what are their determined contribution about foreign investments. So we can say that within the China we have planned for decarbonization up to 2060, but how China investments are related to that. You can put your emissions somewhere else. You will be the carbon neutral in 2060, but what's going to happen for? So on that international level, I think that we need to see this next step in terms of negotiation. This was very tricky question in the past. Countries did not like to talk about that, but I think that we need to open the new chapter. I think that one chapter is, let's say, closed. We see that many countries trying to become carbon neutral, but I think that also we should have discussion about that foreign emissions, let's say, or the emissions related to the investments in the foreign countries, or the talking about that of sending your industry somewhere else and putting your emission in other countries. And the last thing I would like to say, it's related to the big financial institutions, like I mean, for the Europe, EBRD or European Investment Bank, even the World Bank or International Monetary Fund or things like that. I think that these institutions also should take very bold position related to the climate change, because all of these investments that we have in the region, let's say that this thermal power plant in Kostolac, it will, even that if we have a credit from China, the many other infrastructure should be built around that thermal power plant. And that additional infrastructure will not be financed by China. We will probably try to find money somewhere else. And if that money is a climate smart, I think it can be a barrier for the building of this main thing of the whole project. So in that sense, I also should say that all these investments, financial institution and investments funds are also changing their position in terms of climate problem. But I think that this message from them should be also bolder, like saying that we will not put, or we will not give you money if you're building something which is not in line with the green agenda or in line with Paris Agreement and things like that. And the really last point is also, I think that the same thing should be communicated with commercial banks. I think that also commercial banks should take this position. I think that also that's happening here. I will talk about the Serbia because a few days ago I was contacted by people from one financial institution in Serbia. They asked me about to give them some advices related to the climate change. It was interesting. It was very young people. It was not seniors. It was juniors. They heard some signals from outside their from the headquarters, which are not in Serbia. They heard some signals that they somewhere outside they're talking about climate change. They want to learn about that. They started some small group within the institution to try to learn how the climate change is going to impact their business here in Serbia, and they contact me wanting to learn more about the climate change. I think it's a good signal, but I think that again these commercial banks should also take a more bold position on climate change. And I think that mix of all this, as I said, maybe it's going to help to be better in the future. It's really hard question. It's really hard to think about this, but that is my proposal at least.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. I understood that financial institutions play a very crucial role in taking much bolder decisions than so far. And second, I think what you asked for is a much more proactive approach regarding and challenging both the international investors and probably the Serb government to be much more transparent and outspoken about this kind of investments into fossil structure. Yeah, that is very. Yeah, so this is important, I think, also for the Berlin process. Yeah? How can this happen? Yeah? You commit on the one side, see the Sofia Declaration, you commit to a green agenda, and at the same time you receive big Chinese investments into old infrastructure, fossil infrastructure. So I think this question is quite clear. Samir, Lemeš, Zenica is, unfortunately, your town is one of the most polluted places in the Western Balkans. Statistically, I've looked up in it. And I think it's very important to understand from a local perspective, how can the green agenda be implemented together with and in the interest of local communities? How can it be linked up to the interests and what can be done to share the benefits of investments into renewables with local population? Do you have any examples, any ideas how to approach this question?
Well, thank you, Walter. Well, there are really two types of engagement of local communities. One is the environmental democracy, the power of public participation when large projects are implemented. We use this opportunity in Bosnia and Herzegovina to raise the awareness about the process of local steelworks environmental permitting, and that led to small but visible improvement of the air quality. Another story is about small hydro, where civil action made the government to change their approach and to protect the nature, as small hydropower plants went out of control, making only profit for investors by devastating the rivers and the ecosystems. Both these examples are far from final solution. There's still much to be done, but we do see small improvements. So this is one type of engagement. So it's environmental democracy. Another engagement is about personal involvement, such as prosuming. Existing legal and regulatory framework in the Western Balkans is not appropriate and needs adjustments in order to make significant shift from tycoons and corporations to individuals, to local communities. For example, the policy guidelines, the document is called Policy Guidelines on Integration of Renewable Self-Consumers or Prosumers. It was prepared by the Energy Community Secretariat, and it introduced the obligation for Energy Community member states to adopt a legally binding regulatory framework to connect and treat the prosumers. It includes different tools, such as changing the threshold, for example, exemption from balancing, then deployment of smart metering systems, inclusion of peer-to-peer trade opportunities, And the most important is establishing single points of contact to provide customers with information on the rights, obligations, and benefits of becoming prosumers. So this is an example how can individual contribute, but it again requires some action from the sides of government. And finally, concerning the green agenda, we have to say that it's not all about funding and money, as our politicians see it. For all these, we need skilled and knowledgeable individuals who will implement the green agenda. Brain drain from Western Balkans make this problem higher, and European Union should support us to compensate for the low-cost experts that Western Balkan provides to the EU through this emigration. To make this a just transition, European Union should take into account that we already sent our experts to European Union. So we need some compensation for that. Otherwise, the green agenda will just remain another piece of paper with unfulfilled promises and nice wishes. And to implement it, we need expertise and knowledge and know-how. So this is it. If there are any questions, I would like to discuss and try to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this perspective. And as I don't see yet, maybe I'm mistaken, but I don't see any questions yet in the questions and answer section. Please, to my audience, I ask you to put your questions or your comments into the questions answer section, or raise your hand electronically. Then I can let you join our discussion. Ms. Vachey, maybe you could come back to Samir's last question on expertise, yeah, and the problem of lack of experts. I know that the EU has extended this coal, how it's called, coal region in transition platform to the Western Balkans. Can you briefly explain it? How does it work? Are there any financial instruments to it? Is it a tool that can be used for kind of this transfer of expertise? Ms. Vachey.
Yes, sure. Thank you very much for the question, and thanks also to all the other panelists, because I took some notes and I think there was some good points. On the specific question of the brain drain, of course, this is something that we are fully having under our radar, let's say, in our actions with the instrument for pre-accession. We work notably with the youth guarantee, so we try to basically enhance the skills of the young in order to make them stay in the region, to simplify a bit. But then on the specific question of the core region in transition, the idea is indeed to have a joint platform with the energy community and the World Bank to exchange best practices, and indeed to consider how the social impact of phasing out of coal and moving away from coal needs to be better translated in the region towards national governance. So it's true that it's inspired by the just transition mechanism and fund from the EU, but it's a bit more tailor-made. And the energy community is very much in the lead on that, together with the World Bank. Yeah, I think I would keep it short.
Now I have two participants who raised their hands. Mr. Udovicki, would you be the first, please? Put your question.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for giving me this wonderful opportunity to maybe a little more comment, but there is ultimately a question in my comment. I have heard now since this morning the problems of lack of political will for a variety of issues, and right now we're focusing on the green agenda. And particularly in relation to the green agenda, I am speaking from knowing a bit the Serbian situation, but I'm sure at least in some other parts of the region the same happens, which is that since there is no political will, there is also a surprisingly lack of knowledge of what actually are the alternatives, what actually are the costs, what are we actually talking about when we want to move the region towards a greener future. And to the point that I am willing to say that we are not even sure how much coal reserves we have. I don't think of an honest assessment, and I'm not completely sure that there is a capacity for a capable assessment, has been done by the authorities. I speak from my experience also as a former Minister of Energy and Mines and so on. And in all of this period, I haven't seen progress in understanding, in the official understanding of what we have. So my question really is, and I'm not sure whether to whom am I directing it, maybe it's even more for a message to be sent outside this forum. If this knowledge and if this understanding, which is absolutely necessary in order to be able to understand what are the trade-offs and how, whose interest can be protected and promoted and whose needs to be in a way sacrificed and somehow compensated. If we don't have this knowledge and if there is no real political will to acquire it, it has to be developed outside the official channels of work, or outside the government, which is ultimately the civil society. But the tools and the methods whereby the EU interacts with civil society, in my opinion, are not adapted to that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs.
That's the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Sonja, I think is ready to give an answer. Maybe Sonja, you could connect it with an answer to Mrs. Gretti's question in the Q&A. How can the green agenda be effectively implemented if it lacks an enforcement mechanism? So lack of political will, lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
Sonja, please.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is, of course, the major issue is if there is no enforcement mechanism, if the countries are not part of the EU, how can we make them, in a way, follow the green agenda or the EU Green Deal and implement the tough reforms? Well, lots of cooperation. You have a lot of I would say give and take, conditionality of how you tie the money which are pledged with what kind of projects, but also working with local communities, etc. I wouldn't necessarily agree that there is no knowledge. I have to say I disagree a bit. We work quite a lot on the regional level. There is knowledge there. Transparency is another issue. It's another issue how much the governments or the political elites are transparent into what's going on in specifically the power sector in their own countries and within the utilities. But the information is there, the data is there. In a lot of the cases, this is not published. And I believe one of the major issues is not really translating what is going on or what needs to happen, specifically if we discuss coal phase out and just transition to the public. And I'm afraid we are seeing a similar situation. We saw a similar situation how the COVID-19 pandemic was handled, when not a lot of information or not the right information was sort of transmitted to the citizens of how they need to deal with this, what are the risks, etc. And we see basically the similar things happening here. But the local communities, I believe, in many of the places are actually quite aware of what's going on and are quite aware of the risks. And they, many of them would want to join, and many of them actually do join any of the platforms or the initiatives and are ready to start with the transformation. On national level, the situation is different. And we've seen also this in Bulgaria, for instance. If you talk with the Marica, East Marica region, people from there, they're quite aware that the coal phase out will happen at one point in Bulgaria. But if you talk to the government or the people in Sofia, it's a completely different picture. And we see the similar situation in the Western Balkans. And this is something where civil society really can help. But I also think civil society does help a lot. Just see the initiatives against the damaging small hydropower plants. This was literally done by local communities and civil society organizations. So this is something that I think can only be upscaled. And of course, I agree that the communication, Brussels, Berlin, the region needs to be improved in this regard as well.
Thank you very much. We will now take two questions in a row from Mr. Popovic and Mr. Šiško. Please, Mr. Popovic, come in.
Yes, thank you. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for inspirative introductory presentation. I would focus on certain issues which I think lie behind the Green Agenda process. It is, I think that the political actors in the Western Balkans very smartly use this framework to explain as that new era is coming, but nothing happened before. And from my point of view, it is the question of accountability and the question of trust as well. How we can trust to those political actors which fail to implement Energy Community Treaty, which are in a very, very difficult position in application of EU environmental, climate and energy standards. And now we need to trust them that they will implement and they will commit to implementation of Green Agenda. I don't trust them, to be honest. And I think that strong and robust accountability mechanism is needed. And in order just not to comment on the situation we are in, I think that civil society forum is opportunity to be transformed in independent monitoring mechanism of Green Agenda implementation, because we already have capacities of civil society for monitoring and reporting, and we also have reporting processes within energy community and the European Union as well. So I think we need the process which will be kind of follow up to this reporting processes, and I think the civil society forum should be transformed in such a dialogue forum for assessment of progress. And I think that this is the way how partly accountability will be reached. On the other hand, I think since I'm coming from the NGO which working mainly on legal instruments for improvement of environment and climate, I think that exposure to legal and social responsibility is of utmost importance. And I count on the support of European Union and international partners in that sense. So I think that it is important that those actors which fail to implement their obligation need to be responsible for that. And finally, what is important process behind, and we shouldn't miss that, national energy and climate plans will be the framework for setting up targets which are going to be binding targets. And we need, again, independent monitoring of process. And I know as far as for Serbia, I know we are far behind the deadline for submitting the first draft, and we are far behind transparent and participatory process. And this is something which should be tackled immediately. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for addressing this crucial issues of transparency and trust. How should they lead us that fail to implement energy community obligations? How should they now implement Green Agenda? I think this is a very important question, the role of civil society in establishing a constant and effective monitoring in cooperation with the EU. I think this is something, an everlasting task to be improved and improved. One more question by Mr. Šiško, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Denis from Center for Ecology and Energy from Bosnia and Herzegovina, from Tuzla. And basically, the question I wanted to ask was partly answered by Sonja already in the last intervention, but I would again repeat it anyway and address it to Guillemette. And that is, the thing is that it's a question of conditionality. Basically, as I repeat it on many meetings quite often, and that is less carrot, more stick. So I hope that we'll see much more conditionality in disbursement of IPA funds, IPA 3 funds, and much more conditionality also in the Western Balkan 6 Just Transition funds and everything else. And talking about that, also there is one point that should be constantly emphasized, and that is that the actual approach for Just Transition Fund should be from bottom up. We should not allow the central authorities or the leading public utility companies like Elektroprivreda actually to control the Just Transition Fund, which is unfortunately already happening in the region. We have it already happening in Bosnia. So I would ask whoever can influence this process basically to focus on the mayors of these regions, because the mayors are there to provide the answers. How should the support come to their areas? It's not the central government. It's not definitely the public utility company which is running the show. So question is, are we going to see more stick and less carrot, or conditional carrot? And yeah, the answer on the local communities, I hope it's just sort of a comment from the field.
Thank you very much. I would propose for the last 8 minutes of our discussion to take also a look on the questions in the Q&A. Ms. Subotic is asking again about Chinese industrial projects in Serbia, warnings that have been voiced by members of the European Parliament, but it seems that so far nothing changes. So what can be done about that? And again, questions of political will, meaninglessness of obligations, so more sticks, less carrots. Panelists, please take a look at these questions as well. And in the concluding round now, do your best, please, to give, to comment on the questions that have been posed there. Who wants to start? Guillemette, please.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a bit of a challenge to answer to so many questions in limited time and touching to so many issues. But yeah, let me first make a point on the monitoring, indeed, of the Green Agenda. Of course, it doesn't make sense just to have a political declaration on paper and no follow-up. So of course, this is something that we are looking at quite carefully. You might know that in the Sofia Declaration, the RCC, so the Regional Cooperation Council, has been mandated to basically help in the development of a roadmap to implement the Green Agenda, and also to put in place a monitoring system. So of course, there would be a dedicated monitoring system on the engagement on which were taken and the commitment that the Western Balkan leaders took through this declaration. And just to add that there will be also a regional project up to 10 million from our side to specifically implement the Green Agenda and build on what the RCC will have done throughout the year, whether it's a roadmap or the monitoring system. So just to let you know that we are putting mechanism in place to indeed on the transparency and the monitoring part, to answer your question on the transparency and monitoring part. Now, I'm very glad that the work on the NECPs were mentioned, because when it was said earlier that basically Western Balkan leaders did commit, but they don't have any targets, it's not mandatory. Of course, they are not member states, so it's a bit, we can't take the Green Deal and just apply it to the Western Balkans, but still, I mean, they are candidate or potential candidates. They are aligning with the acquis, and this work on the NECP, I think, is very central in the sense that it's a big effort that we are asking, but indeed, apart from the effort in itself to look at all the sectors of the society and see how emissions reduction can happen, there will be a specific target for 2030 with a view of 2050. So there will be really an effort to put the Green Agenda, at least the decarbonization pillar, into something concrete, which is indeed a target, and how to reach this target. So what will be the means? Of course, it's a complicated journey. Of course, it's not straightforward, but it will take time, and the energy community is here to support the countries, and also member states are providing a lot of support. So I think it's also a matter of seeing things half full, half empty in a way, because honestly, and I think that was also mentioned by other speakers, there is a momentum now. If I compare the situation in February 2019, where we did, where basically the Ministry of Energy and Environment did sign in the region a clear energy transition statement and the Green Agenda from last November, there is really a difference. I mean, of course, there's a lot to do, and we all agree on that, but I think the momentum is there. IFIs are mobilized. I mean, Vladimir mentioned that they should be bolder. I think all the IFIs are making now, eligibility criteria for their loans, which are basically linked to policy reform. So there's really a general movement of getting greener and concretely, not only in words. Now to the last point.
Maybe other questions could be answered by the.
Okay, sure. I just wanted to.
There's three more panelists here, so.
Okay, all right. So I'll answer to Denis on the conditionality.
Thank you so much.
Bilaterally. Then thanks.
Thank you so much, Samir, Lemeš. More carrots, more sticks.
I would like to. I'll try to answer two questions from the Q&A. The one is from Alexander Tomanic. I'm quite sure that our signatories do not understand completely how what a green agenda is. They only see the money, as I already mentioned in my first statement. And another question by Srđan Đurović. I'm quite sure that the membership, the governments in the Western Balkans will not use the green agenda as an instrument to prevent social backlash. I think just contrary, they will try to misuse the funds to delay the solutions and try to keep the coal miners as their just mindless mass to fulfill their political needs. And this is something that everyone should take into account and to use, again, more stick and less carrot.
Thank you very much. Vladimir, please.
Okay, I'm not sure that we have so much time. I would use this 1 minute just to send a message. I think that we open many interesting questions here. So my proposal is the next meeting. Maybe we should dedicate several panels to green agenda, not just one. So I think that since that we have so many questions and all of them are very important, I think we should continue to talk about this. And I would finish with that. And thank you one more time for having me here.
Thank you. Sonja, please.
Pressure. I would just like to add, maybe there are really a lot of good questions, and this is, I'm honestly glad that you included, first of all, the green agenda, and it should be, I mean, the discussion started and it should really be ongoing more and more and more, because this is a very important topic and the changes are just, like the grand changes are just starting in the region. The power system transformation, it's a huge endeavor and everybody should be included and it should be transparent. So I'm really glad that you included it. Kudos for that. And I would just say that I believe for just, let's say, energy transition, really there needs to be pressure from all sides. Market side, so we need market integration, we need connectivity from the investor side, from the IFIs, maybe a bit different from what others think, but I do believe that there is possibility to communicate with China as well on this matter, to divert investments from dirty energy to clean energy. There needs to be better communication, EU side, the region, China as well on this. And of course, never to forget the most important, and that's the local communities, to see what kind of infrastructure is needed, to see what kind of investments are needed there, and to have the, when we are discussing the transformation, for them to always be, let's say, included in these processes. The issues with the accountability, of course, will stay, and this is something that we need to just continue working on, I'm afraid. But let's be optimistic. I mean, the changes are already happening. Whether we start doing them now or just do them hastily after 10 or 20 years, it depends on everybody in the region. Well,
thank you so much. Thank all of you, my panelists, for this very engaged discussion. The good news is that there are 3 more working groups on the green agenda, I think, this afternoon and tomorrow. So I think there are lots of topics to be discussed. And I will now pass the floor to Hans-Jörg Brey, one of the co-organizers of the Civil Society Forum, to tell you about the further procedures, and I wish you a very nice lunch break. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Walter, for chairing this panel. I'm now frozen. Do you understand me? Do you hear me? Okay, you do? Okay. Thank you Walter, for chairing this panel. Thanks for the great contributions to all the panelists here. To all participants, and I'm very content that we have a lot of them, more than 100 most of the time, who are listening to this panel. The plan is as follows. We now have 1 hour of lunch break. You can use it for having lunch, but also for networking. You remember how to access this networking space through the cafe within our platform. Don't forget that we will start again at 2 o'clock with the working groups. As Walter said, alone 3 working groups on the green agenda. So don't miss to be back on our platform at 2 o'clock. We have 10 parallel working groups, and you can access the working groups within the platform through the agenda or through these 2 buildings like the Messe Berlin and through this office building. So it's quite easy to join again. So wish you a good break and see you later on at 2 o'clock back in the working groups. Thank you for your contributions. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.